During my 18th birthday, my stepmother attempted to charge me rent, but she was unaware that I was the legitimate owner of the house in which we were living at the time. As far back as I can remember, I have always shared my home with my father. My mother passed away while I was quite young. I was only 4 years old at the time. It was my grandparents, who were my mother's parents, who owned the house that we resided in. Dad went a long period without dating after his mother passed away. While I was staying with a babysitter, there were a few women who came into my life here and there when I was approximately 12 years old. However, they were not serious relationships. They were just coffee dates and occasional evenings out. There was never a single one of them that ever made it to our home, and Dad never appeared to be really enthusiastic about any of them. The moment I turned 14, everything was different. At that point, both of my grandparents had already passed away, and my father and I were the only ones living in that large mansion. During that time, he became acquainted with Sandra. One evening, Ruby's father told her, "I want you to meet someone special." "Ruby, honey," he added. It was the first time I had ever seen him smile with such a frightened expression on his face. "Hello, my name is Sandra." In addition to her tall and refined appearance, Sandra possessed flawlessly combed blonde hair and manicured nails. However, what drew my attention were the two individuals who were standing behind her, and they were her children. Sandra explained with a smile that she had practiced that they were her children. Melissa, who is 16 years old, is pictured here, while James is in his first year of college. James hardly looked at me because he was so preoccupied with texting on his phone. Melissa, on the other hand, did make eye contact appropriately. Towards the end of the same day, she managed to corner me in the kitchen. As she crossed her arms, she then remarked, "Look, this does not mean that we are sisters, pals, or anything else simply because our parents are dating each other. Shall we maintain our distance, all right?" After that, everything moved at a rapid pace. After a period of 6 months, not only did Dad and Sandra get married, but they also moved into our home together. It was strange to see how quickly our home changed from being big to being tight. James moved into the guest room, Melissa moved into the study that we had converted into a bedroom, and Sandra's belongings appeared to multiply overnight, filling every area that was accessible. The scene in the restroom progressed into a nightmare. It is possible that Sandra was in there performing her beauty regimen that lasted for an hour, or that Melissa was using it for her never-ending selfie photography sessions. For the sole purpose of ensuring that I would have time to shower before school, I began getting up 1 hour earlier. Despite this, I did not gripe. Not when I witnessed the way in which my father's face lit up each time Sandra entered the room, not when he began humming while preparing breakfast, and not when he actually started leaving work on time to enjoy dinner with all of us. For the first time since his mother passed away, he was joyful, and he meant it in a wholehearted way. The moment that Dad received his major promotion, everything changed. He arrived at his house one evening with a wide smile on his face and a tie that was loose around his neck. He was virtually bouncing with enthusiasm upon his arrival. During dinner, he told everyone that he was the regional sales director. Are you able to believe it? Almost soon, Sandra began discussing the possibility of purchasing a new automobile and remodeling the kitchen. However, I was unable to move past the section in which my father indicated substantial travel. According to what transpired, extensive meant that he would be absent for weeks at a time, and even for a month at times. Sandra underwent a transformation that was akin to the flipping of a switch the very first time her father was away on a business trip. At the very instant that his vehicle emerged from the driveway, she turned to me with a look that I had never seen her give me before. "Ruby," she remarked with a harsh tone in her voice. "In order to maintain order while your father is away, we need to create some ground rules." As it turned out, the ground rules consisted of a lengthy list of responsibilities and limitations. When I arrived home, it was 4:30 o'clock. Sharp, with no exceptions, not even for activities or study groups taking place at school. On Thursdays, however, I have volleyball practice, so I objected to the idea. "Without wasting a beat," Sandra responded, "then you'll have no choice but to surrender. There is a need for assistance with the meal and the chores." Even the first several days were difficult. As I made my way home from school, I would rush, and I would hardly have time to collect my breath before Sandra would begin to give me directions. "It is necessary to mop the floors, Ruby. Ruby, you should avoid these unclean windows. Ruby, you should get started slicing the vegetables for dinner. During this time, Melissa would be seen slouching on the couch, holding her phone in her hand, and laughing at whatever her most recent boyfriend had texted her. Despite the fact that James was rarely at home, he would leave his dishes in the sink and his laundry for someone else to do when he did end up being there. During the course of one evening, I eventually spoke up when Melissa was watching TikTok movies at high volume while I was cleaning the pots. The question is, why does Melissa not have to assist with any of this? Sandra's head rose abruptly from the magazine she was reading. Melissa needs to give her full attention to getting ready for college. It would be a waste of her time to do chores. However, she is just... What exactly is she? The voice of Sandra had that dark and menacing quality to it. As I looked over at Melissa, I noticed that she was currently filming herself performing a dance trend that was most certainly not studying. None of that, I said as I returned my attention to the dishes. Even the never-ending duties and the unfair treatment were not the worst part of the situation. When her father called or arrived home, Sandra would undergo a complete transformation into a different person. In order to give the impression that she was fatigued, she sat down in her chair and let out a breathless sigh. When Dad would walk through the door, she would exclaim, "Oh, honey, you have no idea how difficult it has been." She was managing the house all by myself and taking care of everything. And her father, the kind and oblivious father, would give her a kiss on the forehead and then bring out a present that he had purchased while he was away. A fancy handbag, an expensive perfume, or jewels that most likely have a price tag that is higher than the sum of all of my possessions combined. As she preened and presented Melissa her most recent gift, he would comment, "You are such a trooper." Melissa would then acknowledge her. "If it weren't for you, I don't know what we would do." As I watched this show unfold, I would stand there in the background, my hands still raw from cleaning, and my homework still waiting to be completed. I was able to catch Melissa smirking at me from behind her phone on occasion, but I chose to remain silent. Where was the sense in uttering any kind of statement? Dad had a wonderful career, was in love, and was happy. They accidentally left me off the guest list for the party I paid, Best Reddit Stories. That had been an entirely different series of events. There were approximately 100 attendees, a DJ, a professional caterer, and a venue that was booked. It had been weeks since Sandra had planned it, and she had made sure that every aspect was perfect. At the very least, my father was present for the birthday dinner I had planned, but he went for another work trip the following day. "I'm sorry, Princess," he murmured as he gave me a hug and then left. "When I get back, we will celebrate in the appropriate manner." Duty calls. After that, I concentrated on getting ready for graduation, which included completing my college applications, placing an order for my cap and gown, and doing the typical things that senior year entails. Until that supper, which took place approximately a week after Dad had left, everything appeared to be normal. Every one of us, including myself, Sandra, James, and Melissa, was seated around the table. When Sandra cleared her throat, I was trying to drown out Melissa's never-ending conversation about the most recent trouble she was having with her boyfriend. I was pushing my peas around my plate. She looked at the table and said, "Ruby," while folding her hands. "We have to have a serious discussion about this matter." I became more alert, thinking that perhaps she wanted to talk about her plans for college. It had been my intention to avoid discussing the matter with her, but it seemed as though she was now expressing some interest in my future. She added, her tone dripping with sweetness, that now that you are 18 years old, you are legally considered an adult, and adults are responsible for certain things. Rent payments are going to be due beginning the next month. It seems reasonable to charge $500 each month. In all seriousness, I choked on the food that I was eating. With a chuckle on his face, James gave me a thump on the back. I explored the entirety of the table. We could see that James and Melissa were having a good time because they were both smiling. "And if I am unable to pay, what will happen?" When I asked, I made an effort to maintain a steady tone. The grin on Sandra's face became wider. "Should that be the case, you will be required to locate a new place to reside, won't you? We are unable to tolerate freeloaders in our premises." The words that Sandra had spoken lingered in the air as I sat at the dinner table, my meal having become entirely ice-cold. The inequity of it all, particularly the years in which she was treated like a servant while her children were allowed to do whatever they pleased. And now with this. It was ultimately something inside of me that broke. A strangely calm tone came out of my voice as I said, "So, let me get this straight. Despite the fact that James has been playing video games for the past 2 years and has graduated from college 2 years ago, he is not required to pay rent. To add insult to injury, Melissa, who is currently in her 3rd year of college and has never completed a single chore in this property, is exempt from having to pay rent. However, I am. Sandra responded by blotting her mouth with a tissue and said, I have decided that from this point forward, my children will not be required to pay rent while they are getting established. At that moment, I experienced a peculiar sense of calmness. Perhaps the release of the truth was the result of years of pent-up resentment, or perhaps it was simply the right time for the truth to be revealed. I found myself smiling, but it was not the smile I always try to maintain in order to maintain peace. Rather, it was something different, something that caused Sandra's own smile to wobble slightly. Having stated that, I leaned back in my chair and said, Well, that's interesting. Considering that this is my home, I will not be required to pay rent. The subsequent stillness was so loud that it was deafening. After then, James began to chuckle, and then Melissa continued to giggle in a high-pitched manner. In addition, Sandra joined in, although her laugh had a sarcastic quality to it. What exactly are you referring to then? While she was laughing, she inquired. I own this house, I repeated, maintaining eye contact throughout the entire conversation. Before they passed away, my grandparents gave it to me in their name. In the moment that they took in my expression, the laughter stopped. The expressions that appeared on Sandra's face were a range of feelings, including amusement, perplexity, astonishment, and finally something that was very close to panic. As she reached for her phone, she sputtered, That is completely ridiculous. At this very moment, I am calling your father. During the time that she was putting the phone on speaker, her manicured nails were tapping ferociously at the screen. The tone of the clock appeared to reverberate throughout the kitchen. How are you? A crackling sound could be heard coming from the speaker. David, Sandra had a firm and commanding tone to her speech. Ruby is relating a number of fascinating tales concerning the house. She asserts that she is the owner of it. Doesn't that not hold any water? On the other end, there was a prolonged period of stillness that seemed to last for an eternity. David. Sandra's voice has a slight upward pitch. Having said that, Dad cleared his throat. Ruby's name was actually given to the property by my in-laws before they died away. You did not consider bringing this up, did you? It was almost as if Sandra was screaming at this point. I don't understand how you could lie to me. My father remarked in a feeble voice, I didn't think it was important. Never appeared to be relevant to me. Is it irrelevant? The color of Sandra's face was changing into a fascinating shade of coral. Does the fact that your daughter, who is a teenager, owns our house not matter? Before her father could react, she abruptly hung up, almost causing her phone to fall to the ground nearby. With the exception of the hum of the refrigerator, the kitchen was completely silent. It seemed as though James and Melissa had never seen me before since they were staring at me. Sandra appeared to be attempting to regain her composure as she took a number of deep breaths. I could hear a small tremor in her voice from time to time, but when she eventually spoke, her voice was artificially bright. Her attempt at a laugh was so forced that it sounded more like a hiccup than anything else. This entire situation has been a major misunderstanding. Ruby, you are not required to make rent payments at any time. Is it possible for us to forget that this entire discourse ever took place before? I was utterly unable to contain my hunger. I stood up and left the kitchen without uttering a single word, intending to make my way to the stairs. In the process of ascending to the 2nd floor, I became aware of agitated mutterings emanating from the lower level. The voices of James and Melissa, who were also angry, were mixed with the harsh murmurs of Sandra. I was already awake by 6 o'clock the following morning, staring at my ceiling and contemplating the ways in which everything had completely transformed in the span of just a few hours. At approximately 7 o'clock, I became aware of activity downstairs, specifically the sound of Sandra preparing her daily coffee. It was just as I was ready to make my way down to the living room for breakfast that I heard her voice floating up from there. The tone of her voice was soft but intense when she spoke on the phone. It was her way of telling David that he needed to take action in order to resolve this predicament. Your daughter is not able to just. We have to take her out of the picture. In an effort to improve my hearing, I froze on the stairs and held my breath. Sandra continued, her voice revealing the aggravation that she was feeling. I know it's her house, David, she said. On the other hand, she is making matters worse. It's getting to the point where she's a problem, and she no longer belongs here." While Dad was speaking, there was a little pause. Even from where I was standing, I was able to pick up on the degree of hesitation in his voice. "Nevertheless, Sandra, it is her home. I can't just evict her completely. No one is bringing up the possibility of evicting her." During the time that Sandra was manipulating someone, her voice took on the syrupy honey tone that she was known for. "All that is required of us is to point her off in the correct path." "Are you referring to the colleges that she applied to, which were located in other states? Telling her that going to one of those would be beneficial to her independence is something you may do to urge her to go." When I heard Dad's response, I felt a tightening in my stomach. Possibly, you are correct. The topic of moving away for college will be discussed with her. It's possible that it would be better for everyone. For the purpose of maintaining a neutral expression on my face, I waited until Sandra had finished her call before entering the kitchen. In order to give the impression that I had not heard anything, I pretended to be busy by fetching a bowl and some cereal. Soon after that, James and Melissa made their way in, both of them giving off the impression that they would rather be anywhere else. Sandra arrived at the last end, clutching her phone in her hand. As if the events of the previous night had never taken place, she greeted everyone with a cheery, "Good morning." The only sounds that could be heard were the crunching of cereal and the occasional clink of spoons against bowls. We were all sitting there quiet. Then, in a manner that seemed as casual as if I were making a remark on the weather, I mentioned that from the following month, all of you will be required to begin making payments on your rent. Halfway to Sandra's mouth, the piece of bread she was eating came to a halt. His phone fell into the bowl of cereal that James was eating. The spoon that Melissa was used rattling against her bowl. "May I be excused?" The sound of Sandra's voice was less than a whisper. I reiterated the word rent while taking another piece of my breakfast. "As far as I can tell, $500 per person seems reasonable. Do you agree that this is what grown-ups do? They cover their own expenses." After a moment of paleness, Sandra's cheeks turned red. It was obvious that she had taken a few sips of her coffee since she coughed. "Could you possibly be serious?" "Oh, you may take me seriously." "Nevertheless," Sandra stuttered, her composure beginning to break, But we're family. Family rent is not charged to family members. That is not the way things are supposed to function." "Were you the one who asked that I pay the rent just the day before yesterday?" During the time that I was stirring my cereal, I inquired while retaining my composed manner. The color returned to Sandra's face. She made a strong click against the table as she placed her coffee cup down on the surface. That was a deviation from the norm. In an effort to better prepare you for the real world, I was attempting to teach you about proper financial literacy. It was impossible for me not to laugh at that. Understanding about finances? What about the real world? What an intriguing statement to make, coming from someone who has been living in the home of another person without paying rent for the past 4 years. "Pay attention to this," I interrupted James as he was about to begin. "Not at all. You pay attention. You received your degree from college 2 years ago. You do not have a paying employment. Playing video games and eating meals that I help pay for with my part-time work are the activities that you spend the entire day doing. It's possible that it's time for you to start reading up on financial literacy as well." I decided to look at Melissa. "When was the last time you even did your own laundry? And you, just when was that? Dare you do that?" The tone of Sandra's voice went up. "What exactly have you done for this family, considering everything that I have done for them?" Sincerely inquisitive, I inquired about it. "Are you going to have me do all of the chores while your children do nothing? You attempted to charge me rent for the house that I own? This morning, you and your father made a plan to try to get rid of me, right?" Her eyes grew more wide. "You were paying attention, right?" While I was putting my bowl away, I confirmed that I had heard everything. "What else is there to say?" "Possibly, you are correct. Perhaps it is time for some adjustments to be made around here. So, here are the choices available to you. You should either begin paying your rent, all of you, or look for a new place to set up residence." The color of Sandra's face changed to a frightening shade of crimson. This is a form of retribution. What you are is nothing more than a rude and hateful child who is envious of my children. "Renting a place?" After a long time, Melissa was finally able to find her voice. Or, what is it? Because you are such an ungrateful little brat, are you going to force us out of the house? When James joined in, he stood up so quickly that his chair accidentally fell backward. What happened after we made you a member of our family? Who are you with? Even when they all started shouting, I maintained a steady volume in my voice. This is my home, together with the home of my grandparents. Don't forget that you are the ones that moved into this place. Sandra growled as she moved away from the table and said, You're going to regret this. You have absolutely no idea what you are doing. She led the way, and James and Melissa followed her. Melissa and James, please pack your belongings. We are going to leave. As they stomped up the stairs and rushed out of the building, I remained silent watching them. After pausing at the entrance, Sandra turned her gaze back to me with eyes that were filled with poison. I'll make you pay for this, she spewed out. Everything will be brought to your father's attention. I did nothing but sit there, finishing my cereal, which was now dripping with moisture, as the sound of drawers slamming and angry shouting came down from the upper floor. They were stomping out the front door within an hour after they had thrown some bags together and thrown them together. Sandra didn't even bother to close it behind her. She just walked out of the room and immediately went to her car, accompanied by James and Melissa. As a result of the sudden silence, the house had an odd feeling. While I was attempting to make sense of everything that had transpired, I strolled from room to room, putting items back in order that they had left in a disorganized state during their hasty departure. My mobile phone didn't start ringing until the middle of the afternoon. A brief glimpse of Dad's name appeared on the screen. A moment before I responded, I took a few deep breaths. How are you? I don't know what the hell you're accomplishing here. The sound of Dad's voice reverberated through the speaker. It was necessary for me to keep the phone away from my ear. Just now, Sandra called me in a fit of hysteria. How could you be so harsh to someone? An internal conflict erupted within me. After years of trying to maintain peace, remaining quiet, and being the nice daughter, I finally reached the point where I could no longer take it. Are you cruel? I interrupted him in the middle of his diatribe. Father, that is quite intriguing. During the time that your wife attempted to charge me rent for living in my own house, where was all of this consideration of cruelty? Would you say that was a kind gesture? On the other end of the line, there was a pause in the conversation. As soon as Dad spoke once more, his tone became more subdued and unsure. What exactly are you referring to then? In no way, Sandra. Do not. At this point, my voice was shaking. Try not to act as if you were unaware of the situation. I overheard you talking to her on the phone this morning, Dad, and she explained that she was attempting to persuade you to force me to move out of the house, and you agreed to do it. Do you recall having the conversation? The subsequent stillness was so loud that it was deafening. It was almost as if I could see him writhing uncontrollably, as he always did whenever he was caught in fraud. Oh, Ruby, honey, you are so oblivious. After what appeared to be a moment of self-reflection, his tone abruptly became more resolute. You, Ruby, are bringing this family to its knees. Would you like it to happen? When it comes to this matter, Sandra has threatened to divorce me. I made myself comfortable on the couch, which was the same couch that Melissa used to lounge out on for hours while I dealt with her portion of the chores. Have you heard that she is going to divorce you until I apologize? To what end? In order to have my very own home? As a result of my advocacy for myself. When Dad said, "She's my wife," his voice broke. She is threatening to leave me unless you either apologize for the way you treated her and her children, or else she will leave me. In order to destroy my marriage, is that what you want to do? I took a look around the living room and noticed that the most of the photographs that were hanging on the walls were of Sandra's family. There was only one small picture of Mom that was still hidden away in the corner. I managed to keep my voice steady when I spoke once more. It's not that I'm sorry here, Dad. This is not the case. When the line was cut off, I had been hung up on by him. The day of my graduation came and went in a flash, I said. The ceremony was stunning, but the fact that there were no seats available in the family section made me feel as like I had a tangible burden on my chest. On the occasion of their celebration meal, the parents of my best friend Sarah took photographs of us together and extended an invitation to me. Despite the fact that they did not bring up the evident absence of my family, Their hugs lasted a little longer than they normally would have. The subsequent couple of days were spent by me sorting through letters of acceptance to colleges and attempting to figure out what my future steps would be. The house had a sense of emptiness and tranquility until one afternoon, when an automobile that was recognizable to the owner pulled into the driveway. Before anybody else, Dad exited the vehicle, followed by Sandra, James, and Melissa. All of them appeared to be dressed up and sporting the same serious looks, giving the impression that they were going to a business meeting rather than going to see their family. Before they could even knock on the door, I was there to greet them. His tone was solemn as he announced, "Ruby." An encouraging gesture from Sandra, who was standing close behind his shoulder, gave the impression that he was a puppet and she was the one pulling the strings. To put an end to this predicament, we have arrived. As I waited, I leaned on the doorframe behind me. In the following sentence, he said, "I am willing to forgive your recent behavior." He chose his words carefully. Everything can return to its normal state, and we can all move back in together. Nevertheless, you are obligated to express regret to Sandra and her children for the manner in which you treated them, and you must, of course, abandon this absurd notion of rent. There was a forced smile on Dad's face, a smug expression on Sandra's face, and a matching scowl on James and Melissa's faces. I looked at each of their expressions. My mind was filled with memories from the past several years, including numerous nights spent doing their tasks, being treated like a servant, and witnessing my father gradually transform into someone I hardly recognized. "No," I stated in a straightforward manner. Daddy's facade began to fracture. "You then left me with no other option. I am finished with you if you are unable to be reasonable about this matter, and if you are unable to be a member of this family. I'm saying goodbye, and I'm going to disown you. Would you like it to happen?" As I said, "That's your choice, Dad," I experienced an oddly tranquil feeling. "You have made it abundantly plain that you prioritize your wife and her children over your own daughter, just as you have been doing every year for the past many years." There was a loud gasp from Sandra. "You have no right to do that, you heartless little witch. Because you have always been envious of my children, you have always attempted to put distance between us and your father." I had one more word to say before I cut her off, pulled out my phone, and called the police to report that I was being harassed. "It is up to you." The possibility of the cops getting involved quickly silenced her. As he worked in uncomfortable stillness, Dad began to assemble the few possessions that he had left behind. During the time that he was packing his belongings into boxes, carrying them to the car, and making his final journey through the house where he had reared me, no one spoke. There was no farewell from him. In addition, none of them did it. The only thing that they left behind in the driveway were tire tracks, as they simply hopped into their vehicle and drove away. The event occurred 3 months ago. This is being written from my dorm room at Northwestern University, which is located more than 1,000 miles away from my home. In this case, Anderson Real Estate is in charge of managing the house. They were successful in finding tenants, a young family consisting of 2 little girls. The revenue from the rental property more than covers my academic fees, which enables me to concentrate on my studies without being distracted by concerns about money. It is via our shared friends that I learned tidbits and parts about my father. He is still working at his job, which has a fancy title and a nice salary, and he is renting an apartment across town that has 3 bedrooms. Sandra was finally able to get the refurbishment she had always desired. A kitchen that belongs to someone else has been updated with granite worktops and stainless steel equipment. Although I have heard that James is still living at home, he has finally got a job. In spite of her decision to withdraw from college, Melissa launched a fashion blog. People are going about their lives, and I am going about my life. Late at night, when I am unable to sleep, I will occasionally look at old photographs from before Mom passed away. These photographs were taken during a time when Dad's smile reached his eyes and family meant something different. I often find myself wondering if we will ever be able to achieve the status of father and daughter once more. In the same way that I sometimes miss him, I wonder whether he ever thinks about me, if he ever regrets the decisions he has made, and if he ever misses me. Perhaps one day, Dad will come to terms with what he has lost. Perhaps we will discover a way to mend the rift that has developed between us. Perhaps we won't do it. Whatever the case may be, I am now aware that I am more powerful than I ever imagined I could be.